All right.
And you're good to go.
Terrific. Thank you.
Yep.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, how are you? I wanted to check in with you about the screen recording.
Oh, we've got it set up and ready to go.
Yeah, fantastic.
Excellent.
Thanks.
It actually worked.
I'm excited by that.
How did you end up getting that?
This was originally a Drupal conference, wasn't it? Before it became more general. Does anybody know?
Right, we ran it as Drupal camp
Yeah.
the first 3 times. And then Kelly had the idea of trying to make it much broader so that it wasn't just Drupal. And we ran it in the campus center during the time that students were here, trying to get more crossover with the students.
Yeah.
Because it's generally been kind of a regional, much more regional and even external UMass rather than so much a UMass thing. But it's very expensive to do it in the campus center, and we really didn't get as many students as we thought we might.
Yeah.
And so this year we moved it back to being during spring break, and
When the
just
access to
did it
more
around
facilities, right?
here. And we did it before we did it in January during winter session, intersession.
Okay. Because I went to the one last year, I guess, or the year before. That was in the campus center.
Yeah.
I think I went to both. All right, we'll give folks a couple minutes to arrive, and then I'll get started. Does anybody listen to The Moth, that radio program? Yeah. There was in Boston, I'm from Boston, there was they had they had like a local, it was The Moth, but it was local, like it wasn't like the Nationals or anything. And I put my name in, and they picked me, and so I had to get up and give a 5-minute story, totally unprepared. This is going to be better than that. But so I was trying to psych myself, like, don't be nervous. Like, you did the hardest thing you're going to do for the next 2 weeks already. So
you'd have to do it wearing a mountain moth costume or something.
yeah, no. It had to be on the theme of the night, which was making peace, and I happened to have a story in the back of my mind that I thought would work, but I'd never done anything like that before. It was a lot of fun, actually. Well, everybody, welcome. This is DIY digital signage, and in this session, we're going to be talking about how you can implement digital signs using just monitors, mini PCs, and a dedicated web page. Quickly about me. The slides for this presentation are available at this URL. I'm using a program that's just JavaScript and HTML, so you can just cycle through it. I've also got my contact information there. I tweet a little bit, and I have a Techne blog is the site where I do like technical articles and stuff like that. I call it a tech blog for non-techies. I try to explain things like, I don't assume you know how to use the terminal. Like, I try to explain it something like beginning to end. And then the last link is I write fiction, and occasionally people seem to want to read it from time to time, so I have a site for that. I'm a web developer and designer for the communications team at the Harvard Library. We depend a lot on like a kind of traditional technology services team that does like the servers and all of that kind of stuff. But I'm the person in communications who does like design for the Harvard Library website, and I'm mainly focused on those sorts of front end. Welcome. I'm mainly focused on sort of front-end development projects related to the library website, but I often work on a variety of other digital projects. So that's me, and so there's actually digital signs in the lobby, which you probably noticed, advertising this conference, and apparently they're being run using a somewhat similar method, using a Raspberry Pi device. But just just to kind of have a shared definition of digital signage, we'll say it's this: signs that are in public spaces, retail stores, corporate buildings, places like that, airports, that make use of technologies such as LCD, LED, and projection, and they provide wayfinding, present exhibition, deliver marketing messages, and other information that might be relevant to the space. So when I say digital signage, that's what I'm talking about. A screen with information that's in to a particular group of people. And they can display, everything from digital images, text, video, streaming media. There's some that have started, some companies have started doing like 3D. And others, they may have touch interactions, they may not. The method that I'm describing does not have touch, I'll be describing does not have touch interaction. Others can even connect to a mobile device through Bluetooth, so the user can interact directly with the sign. But what I'm talking about today, the setup for this is really a sign. It's functioning as a sign. It's a one-way kind of communication. So at the Harvard Library, we earlier this year, the library decided to set up digital signs at 8 different locations throughout the Harvard campus. You may know Harvard has, depends on, if you count every little like nook and cranny library, like the library, there's a library in like, one of the housing buildings that's like a room. If you count them all, it's something like 74. But there's a lot. So we picked we picked 8 as the kind of major libraries we wanted to work with, spread across like science and the fine arts library and our kind of main libraries. Welcome. And so a common approach to, so what we want to do is we wanted to share information about upcoming events, about collections and resources that the library has, and other sorts of library news. And so what you're looking at here is, this is in Widener Library, the kind of like flagship library. This is a vertical kiosk that's displaying information about Harvard's doing the president actually is doing a thing in cooperation with the archives, which is also part of the library, about the connection between Harvard and the history of enslaved peoples. So that's the kind of big splash thing, and then there's events and some tweets. You'll get a closer look at that in a little bit. So we had some kind of unique challenges. I won't get into that too much. It won't make this so much of a case study as just kind of explaining like how to go about it. But I will mention, in a building like Widener, there aren't a lot of places where you are allowed to put things like that. Like there are rules, because it's like a historical building. There are rules about where you can put it, and there are also very strict sort of rules about where you're going to have a power source and whether or not you're going to where you're going to have Wi-Fi. Because anything that involves like drilling into a wall in one of these libraries is a big deal. So that was one of the challenges we had that I think a lot of folks didn't have to deal with. So I just want to mention that. So a common approach to doing digital signage is to contract with a specialized vendor that's going to give you the whole package. They're going to give you the hardware, the monitors, the software network. They're going to provide support and all of that. And so we looked at one vendor in particular that was already being used by the Faculty of Arts and Sciences, and it seemed okay. And then we also, in this particular instance, one of the things to be aware of is those systems tend to be pretty expensive for what you get. In this particular instance, the library, I don't think this is secret information or anything, but it was just interesting to have to sell them on something other than this, because they had a big pile of grant money that they needed to spend so those folks in higher ed may be familiar with this issue. So they had a big pile of grant money that was gonna like expire, and so they needed to spend it on something. And so they were just like, please buy this expensive vendor solution, and we had to talk them out of it into something less expensive. But the reason I was mainly in charge at that stage of leadership, why this was going to be a problem for my team. So I'm a web developer. We've got a print designer, a writer, and then the director of our office, and that's kind of it. So I saw some problems right away with the particular vendor that they were using, but I imagine many of these would be problems you might encounter with another vendor. One of the things that they gave us was they said, okay, here's your software for running all of your digital signs all over campus. Okay, that's great. It's PC-based only. We're a Mac shop. So we would have literally had to buy a PC or lease a Dell and put it right next to my station, and only one of us at a time could work on it. That was not going to work for us, right, at all. That's just not how we work. Like we work together to maintain our Drupal website, and it's a content management system, and we're used to working asynchronously. Like somebody uploads an image, somebody else is writing some text. I'm, adjusting some CSS code to make it, to do something else. So having one PC in a corner was not going to be workable for us. The default designs were laughably bad. They were so bad. It was like they showed us, they had like a gallery of like default, it's like slides or whatever, and they were like, like a Photoshop gradient going vertically from like, orange, crush orange to like purple or something. And it said like sign. And we're just like, this is not, no. It didn't look like the rest of our branding. We didn't have a lot of ability within the system that they gave us to do more than just upload kind of a big image file to replace that. So that was going to be a problem. They had this proprietary, software system, so we were going to have to train anybody on how to use it, and that was going to take time and resources. The user interface for this particular vendor software, it looked like Netscape. Like if you remember Netscape, like that's what the icons look like. I don't know if they'd updated it ever. It was supposed to be able to display web content, but that seemed inconsistent. You're supposed to be able to like embed a piece of like kind of like an iframe or a piece of web content. That worked on some sites and not on others. It was not integrated well with social media. We couldn't just easily bring in a Twitter feed if we wanted to do that. And more broadly, a limited ability to draw from other kinds of feeds. Like we have a calendaring feed from a proprietary system called Trumba. But even if I wanted to use our content management system to using Drupal, how many folks are Drupal people? Okay, so if I wanted to use views to create an atom, an RSS feed, something like that, and feed it in, that was going to be a problem as well. So really, and then the thing that mattered less to them because of the particular context of this project and the way it was funded, it's also more expensive. So does anybody have experience with a vendor? That was my experience. Other folks might have had. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to share about that?
I think you nailed the issues. That's exactly right. The other one is that not only is it expensive, that anything that you want to do that isn't in the default package is more expensive. So one group at the library here decided that what they wanted after they'd set up their digital signage is they wanted to have a crawl of words along the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
And it turned out that to enable that functionality in the software, you had to monetize the company even more to turn on that one little piece of functionality. And they probably had another 20 different tricks or things that you could do. That,
I see.
if you could write one line of JavaScript, you could just do it yourself.
Right. Yeah. So, go ahead.
Likewise.
Okay.
Same story. With the add-ons and everything, and the crappy proprietary software, and the inability to connect with our information systems where the information is that we want to get.
Okay. I'm sad to hear that, but also glad to hear that I'm sad that that's the state of things, but glad that the information I'm giving you seems to check out with other people's experience, because I've just worked with this one vendor. So we said we told the leadership, for all these reasons, the decision had basically been made by people above the communications department, but to her great credit, the director, who was new to the job, basically spent all of the meager kind of political capital she had to save us from this nightmare. So she said, "Tom, can you come up with something basically come up with something in a week that we can show and say this is how it's going to work." And I can convince them to do it. And so that's what we did. So what I proposed was what I would call a web-based approach rather than a vendor-based approach. And basically with this, the idea is just we had an existing Drupal site we created a dedicated theme for what the look and feel of the digital sign page would be. For those, since there are enough Drupal people in here, I'll use some of the, I use the theme key module to say, and basically I set a rule. Always use the default theme for our website, except when you go to this path. And when you go to that path, use this other theme. And that was really nice because we had a big, complicated, heavy theme for the Harvard Library, this enterprise level site, right? So just being able to like go, I'm not even going to look at any of that. Like I'm not going to worry about like CSS conflicts and stuff like that. I'm just going to create a totally different theme. But you could do this with the same thing I'm going to describe for you. We happen to do it in Drupal. You can do it in WordPress. You could do it. There's no reason you can do it with anything that produces a web page at the kind of end and a browser can look at. So basically, we created a dedicated page and theme, and we display that page on monitors that we put throughout the library. That's kind of it. So the advantages of that approach, you just said like to do a ticker, like that would take you could write a line of JavaScript that would do that if that's something you wanted to do. Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, agreed. But same thing here. Like a lot more control over the layout and design, and we're using the skills involved in making that design are widely available, right? So it's not like let's say I didn't feel like being the person that did it. We could have easily found any other competent web developer could do this, right? Instead of having to go with like a specialized kind of monopoly vendor. No additional staff training in our case because all of the content is either coming from feeds that we're already, like the library calendar or social media that we're already maintaining, or the kind of special content that we're featuring in the middle is coming from Drupal. And it's just a content type with like an image upload and a caption. It's like 2 fields. And everybody on our team knows how to like create a news item on the website. This is no different. The ability to add new features as we need them using our standard web languages. Given that we were working with a content management system, it was actually pretty easy to embed social media and other kinds of feeds. So the modules that I used, there's a Twitter module, a contributor module just called Twitter. Which allows you to connect it to a Twitter feed, and then we had a feed from a calendar, and that I used a couple of I think it's called. There's a couple of feed modules in Drupal. There's like feed parser and things like that. So then the final advantage is that it's actually really inexpensive, right? At least in our case, the way we did it. So, well, does anybody have any question about that kind of basic approach? Pretty straightforward. Okay, so here's there's a lot, again, as with we use Drupal, you could use WordPress, something else. Similarly, we chose this particular piece of hardware. You could use something else. So this is what it is. It's called an Intel Compute Stick, and I'll send this around if anybody, I don't want people to have to get up and walk to the next person, but if you want to look at it, it's over there. And basically, it's got you can connect to it via the USB ports. So just hook it up to a mouse and a keyboard. It's got wireless access. So we're using the existing wireless connection in the libraries, the same things that staff and students and librarians are using. Connects via that. It runs Windows 10. So it's got a full operating system. We don't have to like learn some specialized operating system. And basically it also costs about $130 each. So your investment is $130 for the stick, whatever the monitor costs, installation and your development resources to build the page that's associated with it. And these devices are not the kind of things obviously you'd want to use like as a substitute for your PC and run like Windows and while running Windows also run like Word and Excel and like do stuff. But all we're using it for is the Chrome browser. We're just loading up the Chrome browser, pointing it at a page, and that's it. It plugs into a monitor with an HDMI connection, the same thing that before Apple lost their minds, they had on their MacBooks, and that you have on your on your televisions. In terms of power, it has its own power cord, little power cord. The only thing that we did consider and we ended up not doing, but that's interesting, some monitors, according to the folks at Intel, some monitors have enough power that if you were short on outlets or you needed to put it somewhere where there wasn't an existing outlet, you could theoretically power it via USB, plugged into the USB to USB into the monitor itself. It doesn't seem to work for the monitors that we have, but I'm sure you can investigate that and test if it was going to be difficult to find a place to actually physically plug it in. So that's a power and security were a couple of things we had to think about. So that's the power issue. Also security. So we don't want somebody yanking this off of one of these and walking away with it, right? So we have a couple of different configurations basically. One is a vertical kiosk like this, the stand, and everything is in a locked is locked up in the back. So both where it plugs in the HDMI port and all the power stuff. It's just so you just unlock it and unlock it to get access to it. We have, and that's a little bit of a closer look at one of those kiosks. This is just a horizontal monitor on a stand, and it's just here it is. You can see it's plugged into the side of it. So we've got we've got the power cord right here, and here's the HDMI connection, and here are the USB ports. So it's just plugged in. So to prevent people from just yanking that and walking away with it, there's a little, in these particular devices, there's a very, very small loop. If you decide to go with these specific devices, I'll just mention that we had to get a kind of specialized tiny gauge wire for it because they weren't using any of the kind of like USB, some USB devices and other things will have a normal sized, kind of more standard sized, hole in them for wires like this. But this one was super, super tiny. I think that they basically they just wanted to be able to say it was possible. So it was kind of a pain to have facilities have to figure out what was going to actually fit in that hole. But it's not I don't think most students are going to be interested in our spaces in stealing them. We just need enough of a deterrent. It's kind of more like, we're just locking our door, So configuring these guys. Well, does anybody have any questions about this basic hardware kind of stuff? Yeah.
Is there a way to connect touch sensitive interface to it?
I don't know. That's a good question.
Like maybe USB. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't see why not. I mean, but yeah, I haven't looked into that. It's a good question.
Yeah, there are touch screens that you put in front of the monitor that I'm not sure if I've seen one next with USB. They've been around for years.
Okay, cool. So yeah, you could do it externally, or maybe if the monitor already had that capability. I don't know if there's anything special about these devices which would prevent them from being able to interact with a touchscreen. It should. Yeah.
Standard Windows.
Yep. Yep. So in terms of configuring them, just some things. I'm not going to go into the details. I'm happy to show anybody who wants to see the details, my notes on that or whatever, or email you stuff. But basically, some things you got to think about when you configure this. So basically, we did 8 of these. So I just sat at my desk and I did some backups too, and just plugged them into my monitor and configured them, and one right after the other. So just make sure that they can connect to the wireless network. You're going to want to adjust the advanced display settings if necessary to the correct resolution for the monitor that you're using. In our case, we had to authorize the devices to be acceptable devices on our network, right? We turn off the screensaver download Google Chrome. It comes with Edge, but I just wanted the kind of most vanilla browser I could have. So I just downloaded Chrome for all of them. You end up wanting to obviously turn off any notifications and updates that might interrupt your display, and set the browser to launch on startup. And also configure auto login, right? So that there's a way to do that so that whenever it restarts, it'll just automatically log in an admin user or some user. So with all of that together, when it's configured that way, ideally what happens is you plug it in and you walk away. There's one thing you need to do manually, and that's just, I'm not a Windows tech in any at all. But like, there's got to be a way to like Windows 10 to make the Google Chrome browser full screen. I just don't know how to do that. So the one manual thing I have to do is connect to the device when it's plugged into a display and make Google Chrome's window full screen, and everything else is taken care of. So some things to configure on the content management side or the web page that you've got it pointed to. One of the things is you want it to auto refresh, we wanted ours to auto refresh anyway, because we had feeds coming into Drupal from our calendaring system. We had feeds coming in from Twitter, and actually early on, I was making design changes in production. And my boss would walk by the sign and say, "Can you make this brown?" I'm like, okay, sure. So and then we'd want to see what it looked like brown. We set it up so that it would auto refresh, and this is just a snippet of what that kind of code looks like. For folks who don't do comments in HTML, that I had to comment it out so that it wouldn't actually execute the thing in my own presentation, which I learned when I was practicing it. So this little line of HTML in the head, HTTP equiv equals refresh, content 0, semicolon, some URL. That's an easy way to do a redirect. It says, as soon as you load the page, refresh it, the content 0 means wait 0 seconds, do it immediately, and then send it to this other website. That's what this is really kind of for, but you can repurpose it for just refreshing the page, which is, you normally wouldn't want to do that to your hapless user, just force their browser to refresh the page. And you probably have a better way of doing it than this, but this is just a real simple, what we put on the head of the Drupal theme. It just says, hey, every 600 seconds, every 10 minutes, refresh the page. And that saves us having to add like a Chrome browser plugin that we would also have to manually turn on every time, let's say the power goes out and the device restarts. We want, as much of that to happen automatically as possible. So any questions about that stuff? All right. I'll show you, I've got the folks, I don't know what you use to do digital prototyping. I use Axure these days. So this is kind of an example of one of the mock-ups we were working on. And I'll just kind of show you the regions that we've got going on here. So, and this is just, it's a Drupal node that we've styled in a certain way. We happen to be using panels and views to accomplish this, but this could be, a static HTML page, basically. So here we're using the clock module to just give us, the current time without having to do any refreshing or anything. This is a feed coming from Trumba, and I'm using a module in Drupal to pull in this and refresh it as often as possible. And it just looks at what time is it now, and it looks at, are there any new events, or any events that have been deleted, and then it creates Drupal nodes, and then those using the feeds module, and then those nodes are displayed via views here I say only display 3, et cetera, et cetera. Down here, we use in each one of these empty blocks is a Twitter post, a tweet, with a small version of the image. The one thing that we did do is, because it's not interactive, I just wrote a little tiny script that looked at each tweet, and if it had like HTTP in it or anything like that, to strip that out. And we're in control of the tweets that we're writing, so we can always like put them at the end or something, or like we never write a tweet that says like go here : HTTP blah blah blah, right? So so that it doesn't affect the content, but we didn't want people to be walking up and trying to touch the links. But we do keep hashtags. We just don't give them any kind of special coloring to indicate that they're clickable. And then the centerpiece here, this image, this is actually a slideshow, and it's just it's a Drupal views slideshow, and each piece is a photo that we upload of a particular set of dimensions, and a no more than 20-word, and we just update it every Wednesday. So once a week on Wednesday mornings, we just update it. The only thing that we did that's a little kind of like Drupal weird is I actually had this content not be published, and then created a view that says only display it if it's not published, which is weird. It's like backwards what you would normally do, and that's because we're using Google search, and I've yet to on our site, because we broke our Solr, but we don't want it showing up in searches. There's much better ways to do that, but we're gonna like robot.txt or whatever. But for now, it's just not published, so it doesn't show up in the search. Yeah, we're just sort of like fumbling in the dark here, but we get it done. The other thing I want to show you related to that is, so I found out like a couple of days before they were going to actually bring all this stuff in and be like, okay, plug it in, let's see if it works. They're like, oh, by the way, we told you that some of them are going to be vertical, right? I was like, oh, no, you did not tell me that. But that's a very easy solve. So you got a lot of flexibility if you're doing it this way, because everything you know about responsive design is relevant here. You just apply a media query, and in the media query, you determine, is it horizontal? Is the view port of the monitor horizontal, or is it vertical? And based on what its width is, set up the styling differently. And so one of the things that's caused us to consider is that we might be able to tell students and see if they had any interest in doing this, saying, hey, do you want to take the digital sign with you? Like, go to this URL, and we could just write a couple more media queries and do some new layouts that are for other kinds of devices, because it's just a web page. Back. I'll actually show you for if there's anybody who's sort of new to responsive design. All I did was I designed just the same kind of principle that you would use in designing a mobile first kind of thing. I built the kind of narrow vertical one with my core CSS code, and then I put CSS code for the horizontal one inside a media query with a min width that seemed appropriate for a certain width of the display. So if the viewport is this wide, use this set of additional CSS rules to overwrite the rules you're currently using to style the vertical one. So we actually had about 127 undergraduates in public spaces in the libraries where these signs were give us feedback. So here's what they said. Based on the designs that I showed you earlier, they said, whoa, that's way too much information you're giving us. It's eye-catching, but overwhelming and too wordy. They wanted the fonts to be bigger, presenting less information at a time. This was the main theme. And also we determined, of course, that a lot of them were kind of overlooking them because they just weren't in the exact spot where people were walking to. So like if it wasn't, like if it was like, if this is the circulation desk where folks are coming up to check stuff out and it's over here instead of right behind the circulation desk, they didn't even see it really. It just wasn't part of their world. And so we have a challenge of needing to place it somewhere where it's going to be seen, but also, again, these building issues make it difficult for us to just easily put it wherever we want. So the recommendations that they gave us, which I have a meeting with my boss to implement next week, is to reduce the amount of content that's on there. And that's I think there's, just like in web development, there's there's this push and pull between what does the client want and what does the user want, and you can only sort of the user, what the user wants is important, but ultimately like they're not the one that's going to like say make it so, but your boss is or somebody else. So at least that's the way that works at the library. And so the students were really just like, get rid of the Twitter feed. I'm never going to look at that. That's not how I engage with that kind of digital media. I don't want to see it on a sign. But it's important to our team that the kids know that we're down with the Twitter. So like we need to like communicate that. And so tentatively, I'm like, let's not have 4 of them. Let's just have 1. Like, and we won't make it a big deal, but it'll still be there. But the students that look at it don't really care about it. The thing that they want is, because these are it's not one building where they're in different locations around a single building, like one's at the Kennedy School and for government, one's at the Fine Arts Library, one's at the Science Library. It makes sense that they want content that's specific to each science location. That doesn't seem like a particular technical challenge, but it's going to create a certain workflow for our team that may or may not be sustainable with the other projects that we've got going on. So that may not happen just for that reason, just because like we can't have a beat reporter. Sorry?
They get money.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we can't. But as it currently stands, we would need like another FTE, to do a bunch of stuff. But none of us have time to kind of be library beat reporters and constantly be getting fresh, specific content for these signs. Although we'll probably figure something out. So that's how we've implemented it at the library. I'm happy to answer any questions that I can and share any of the more kind of technical information. If you decide it's something that you want to do yourself, just happy to give you my card if you want to be in touch if you decide to go this route. So thank you all so much. Yeah, go for it.
I'm not familiar with it. You guys talked about vendors. I said Oracle. Is that vendor?
I've not.
What is it?
Huh.
I know I asked like that where I work. They're using Oracle TV, and someone told me to come to this and see what other people are using. So you guys talked about vendors.
I just didn't want to besmirch the reputation of a particular vendor, but
They provide
the hardware and the software and everything, yeah, in a package.
So it doesn't matter. I thought Oracle TV, like maybe that was one of them. If I said that out loud.
Yeah, the poet Frank O'Hara has people asked him why he never wrote reviews. He was also an art critic. Why he never wrote reviews of artworks and shows that he didn't like, because he said it'll go off into oblivion on its own. It doesn't need any help from me. I don't think that company's long for the world if they don't figure out a better way to do what they're doing.
So as you know, we've done the same sort of thing here. And so I've got a number of questions for things that we were challenged with.
Yeah.
Do you do anything? So it sounds like you have just the same image that shows 24 hours a day on the signs?
No. Let's take a look at. Actually, I'll just show you. I'll just go to the page right now.
Yeah.
I whenever you show something live, something's going to be wrong. So that's why I've been reluctant to do that. Let me see. That's showing the vertical.
Right, because the window's less than.
Right. So for example, that's going wrong today. So what happens, so obviously time's dynamic. This is a views slideshow, so it keeps changing. These events,
I mean, does the sign stay running 24 hours a day?
Oh, I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. Well, you can turn we'll turn the actual monitor display off, but the stick drive or the mini computer is always running. Occasionally, in terms of troubleshooting, it's restarted a couple of times, which is actually not such a big deal, given that the only thing you have to do is connect to a keyboard and mouse and like make Chrome come back at full screen. Because we've turned off all the other stuff. We're like, Windows don't run random things, don't notify us about anything, just shut up and run Google Chrome. So once you kind of give it those instructions, and we've been doing this for about 15 weeks, it hasn't been a big deal. The only thing is that there's some the Kennedy School is far away from where I work, and the Harvard Yenching Library is far away from where I work. So when their sticks need restarting, I have to like schlep over
So
there.
you have to you can't connect to them remotely?
We don't have a method for doing that right now.
Yeah, so just to let you know, we do it with Debian, and we can connect them via SSH, and so we can do some stuff that way.
Nice.
One of the things is that we had some that were in places where people wanted it to have one kind of sign during the daytime, but a different sign at night, or to have them turn off. People were angry that they were still showing a sign at night if there was nobody around, because it looked energy efficient, even though most displays basically cost the same amount of energy whether they're lit up or not.
Interesting. Yeah, no, the kind of impulse to like not be flagrantly anti-green when you have a campus green initiative, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we had put in something and the way we do it is we just have a script that gets run by cron at a particular hour. And so you have two URLs that are set for it.
Yep.
And if you want, I can show you
Sure.
what we're doing. If you go to URL. you see
Oh,
this.
but maybe after, just because several other people had questions
Sure.
too, so I didn't want to.
And so for a configuration, you said you just set them all up by hand. Do you have any way to update them? Does the software update it, or is it
Like Windows itself? Yeah, I mean,
Chrome and-
I suppose I could plug into them and just do it manually. I've adopted I try not to anger them. I try not to say harsh words to them or go
When you
near
ever
them.
start up and the network doesn't work, what happens if that happens?
That's only happened once so far, and that was, we determined that it was actually a signal strength issue, and so we had our IT folks basically boost the signal somehow. But so far, that's not come up. I was worried that might be an issue, but it just hasn't been.
And if the web page doesn't load? That was one of the ones that we ran into, that because the refresh is in the theme, that if the web page doesn't load, it doesn't do anything. And so we've been using Firefox or Iceweasel and Debian. But there's an add-on that you can use called Try Again, where it keeps trying the URL at less and less often, very quickly at first and then slower and slower. But that way, if there's a transient failure in the server, like the server just happened to be overloaded or down at that moment, within a few minutes, it'll try again and load the page.
Nice. Yeah, we're currently weirdly there's security. So we just moved the actual Drupal instance that is the Harvard Library website to the cloud. Well, I say we, our tech department, LTS, they're basically, they were like, we don't want to deal with your digital sign right now. Like, we've had trouble pulling in some of the feeds because of security settings and things like that. So they're like, will you just run it on the QA server that lives in the basement of this building? Yeah, sure, that's fine. So, but theoretically, once their next step is once they got everything else up and running, we're gonna put this on the production server and repoint to that. In which case, if there's a problem of any kind with the actual site or the servers or anything, we've got 24-hour coverage on that. We'll just call them.
Right.
And so like it might be down for 10 minutes, but the page will refresh if they fix it,
Although if the browser fails to load the page, because your refresh is
Ah, yeah.
then you're just down.
You're right.
and
Yeah.
the server's back up. That was the thing that we
Oh.
were having to work around.
Has that happened?
Yeah, it did happen a few times, and so that was why we switched.
Okay, I'm gonna definitely talk to you after about how to rescue us from embarrassment.
How do you persuade client stakeholders not to do stupid stuff? Like assessment, that's all.
Oh, yeah, that's one. Yeah. That's a whole other things. The way that things work in the libraries is that there's a lot of participation from librarians, and it's in the higher ed context. Like I could do a whole talk on that. I'm still figuring that out as part of my role. I mean, I've literally been in meetings when someone from the divinity school is critiquing a design in a meeting. I'm showing a prototype and cannot get past that I'm using Lorem Ipsum text because she reads Latin. And so she's like, this isn't right. Like, I was like, well, no, it's just, this is a standard thing that designers, she's like, but this doesn't mean what it's supposed. I was like,
In the nominative, not in the genitive.
yeah, exactly right. Yeah. And so it's like, I hear you, but that's not what we're talking about right now.
Did you evaluate the Linux version of Compute Stick?
No.
Is there a Linux version?
Yes, there is.
Oh,
Cool.
Yeah, I mean,
But Raspberry Pis are a lot
it's
cheaper.
less memory, but it's cheaper.
Cool.
Right, but Raspberry Pis are cheaper, and they have Ethernet. That's one of the problems we've had, is that Wi-Fi just isn't that reliable, whereas the Ethernet can always work.
Great. Yeah. I mean, I think that if you get anything from this talk, it's like, here's the concept, which sounds like we're both implementing in different ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like whatever devices are certainly you can do it better than we've done it. And I would just encourage you to try out different things. This is just a kind of like where we've started.
No, absolutely.
But
Great that we have this
yeah,
opportunity
absolutely. Yeah.
to see a different take on the same thing.
Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
I'm not sure of how they do that, but there's TVs all over the main parts in the campus center right next to tell their digital signage for events. So there's a centralized office that you can submit, like I submit slides to. So have you thought of incorporating things like that into the slideshow? I know sometimes there's too much text, to read. So I know students might have a problem with that, but I don't know how Harvard does it in different places.
Yeah. So currently, we end up we're far enough in now that we have a way for we've set some specifications of like, give us an image this size and text no longer than 20 whatever, and librarians from other parts of the library will suggest things to display here. So we do that. So that's about as direct as it gets right now. This feed, the upcoming events feed, actually, and sometimes this is helpful and sometimes it causes problems. We're using the Trumba system, and any authenticated library staff person can go in and add an event to the calendar. So, and it pretty much without a lot of filtering shows up there.
Does the calendar do a view slideshow, or is it just that?
No, it's just that. But so every 10 minutes it checks to see, is that event over? And if it's over, it replaces it with the next next closest upcoming event.
I'm going to suggest that if you have a problem opening Chrome,
Yeah.
there's a thing called the kiosk mode.
Okay. Oh.
And in the shortcut, if it still works, I haven't tried it in a few years,
Yeah.
it's just dash kiosk. It opens without the buttons and everything. Should go full screen.
Well, I like it. Okay, I didn't know that. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Let me. As I said, the slides. Oh, go ahead.
I was waiting to the end because I have lots of questions like Steve.
Okay.
I'm at Smith College in the library there, and we've been running experiments similar to yours. We have a vertical kiosk, and a lot like the one that you have.
Mhm.
And we actually went basically the same route. We looked at a tool called Rise Vision, found that it had all the problems you mentioned, and so at some point they were thinking, well, maybe we should use Rise Vision and then embed a page that we build on the website. And it's like, you mean so we should just use a web browser, right?
I had this exact same conversation with some of our folks.
Yeah, so the
I was like,
website-
yeah, you're describing taking the thing that we would have to build anyway, and then adding another layer around it and paying for that other layer. Like
Yeah.
that doesn't make any sense.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think calling it web-based, I think is a good, I like that. The web-based solution. What we did is, because, well, for a few reasons, I ended up making a lightweight sort of API
Mhm.
in Drupal. And then what you see on the screen is actually a small JavaScript application that does an AJAX call to the API, so we can suck down, more structured data, and then it renders it on that page. One thing I like about that is that because the design is different from the website, we can kind of maintain it separately. And I'm really into this idea, the code idea, which you may have heard of, create once, publish everywhere.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I guess PBS or somebody, where we focus on structured data and then we can publish it in lots of different ways. And that screen orientation is one example where maybe locations where we can kind of filter the data and display it differently depending on the context. I'm actually going to be rebuilding this thing because we're changing our branding to the website. And I'm excited to do that now.
Yeah, no, I definitely have got, I have cards. I hope folks will, let's talk.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you all very much. I appreciate your attention and time. If you need the slides, you can just go to that URL and the whole presentation is there. Probably need to stop this.
I'm going to take a picture.
That thing?
I want to get slides.
Oh, I got it. Sure.
Oh, yeah. That's okay. Thank you. I don't think I have mine.
Thank you.
Sure thing.